if you're listening, I just want, like, maybe it's not pediatric cancer, maybe it's marriage, maybe it's your body image, maybe you need to unfollow diet culture, maybe you need to unfollow something else, like, but this book has like a little bit of everything, because there are 10 stories inside of the book that are my brave, brilliant, incredible clients who have offered parts of their story knowing that it will help somebody else if they start questioning it like that.
Hi, everyone. Jana here. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I know I am, because I have a very special guest with me today. If you have not heard of her, you're in for a real treat. I have Melissa Wiggins here with me today, better known as Coach Mummabear. Melissa is a fiery Scottish native. She has donned many hats. She's a sharp-minded lawyer, a high-performance master certified professional life coach, and an inspirational speaker. You can listen to her super cool Scottish accent on her podcast, Coaching and a Cup of Tea with Mummabear, which is in the 10% global, I might add. I met Melissa through my dear friend, our dear friend, and my mentor, Amberly Lago, a year ago. And I was hooked the second that I met her. She has the best smile, story, and energy. And once you hear her speak, you just want to hear her speak again. So I don't know about you listening, but I'm ready to hear Melissa's badass accent. So without further ado, let's get to it. Melissa, welcome to my show. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I know both of us have been excited for this because it feels kind of like a big full circle moment for both of us, right? Like when I met you, you didn't have a podcast. When I met, my book was not out yet, and so it's just kind of exciting for both of us to, hey, look at the fruits of our labor when we do the work, right? It's just so cool to be here, and I'm so incredibly proud of you. I mean, you're just killing it, and I'm just grateful to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And you just mentioned your upcoming book. So there's so many topics that I want to discuss with you, because you're so authentic and real. And I know for me, that's what draws me to someone, is their authenticity. But today, I specifically want to talk about your pretty big accomplishment that's about to be available for everyone, and that is your upcoming book, which is titled Unfollow. And it is not a prescriptive guide, but rather a thought-provoking exploration of life's choices and possibilities. Melissa teaches the concept of having the right questions so that you stop doing life in a harder, more complicated way than you need to. The right questions change everything. Melissa, I just love everything about that. What is your goal for this book for every reader?
For every reader, yeah, it's a great question. I love it. So, Unfollow was really the real reason that I wrote it. Was I started looking at sort of how I was, where I was in my life, and thinking about what things changed for me as I sort of got to this point. And I realized that along the way, I just started unfollowing things that in the past maybe I hadn't questioned, how we just go along with the flow, and our subconscious and our autopilot just takes us here, or family norms, or this is what we've always seen or done. And I started unfollowing some of those things. And so I realized that a lot of my success in my life has really come from that. And so I wrote the book in the hope that everyone will start to question their life with excitement, right? You've talked about this, you and I have talked about this before, right? When we're in that healing work, sometimes we can be so stuck in healing, Jana, that we're not actually living, right? Like we're just in the mud constantly, and we're not taking ourselves out of it and just enjoying like life as it is right now. And so the sort of red thread that goes through the book is this idea of one life, okay? We get one life. Yeah. What are you going to do with it? And so my hope for the reader is that they open up the book and they see the 20 chapters and they pick the chapter that works for them, that they want to think about right now, and they go to that chapter and they read it and they start questioning things in their life from this place of, what would my life be like if, right? What if I did this thing? How exciting would my life be? How much better would my life be? Instead of, sometimes what we do is we get stuck questioning and we stop doing it, Jana, because we get scared, we get fearful, we come from this place of shame and lack, and it keeps us in that place, and then we stop questioning our life, and that's how we stay stuck. So the idea of the book is really to have the reader have this experience and journey of going through different parts of their life bit by bit and questioning it. And maybe you're going to question it and you're like, I'm great with this part of my life. Or maybe you're going to question it and say, you know what, this is something I kind of do want to shift.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I know that it has applied in my own life myself, and for me, it's like you go through life and you want all these things, right? You have these goals and these big aspirations, but we have this fear. It's like a huge cinder block in front of us that's fear, and it just stops us from
Yeah.
going after what we really want. And then you get these desires, you want to go after it, but then you're scared, right? And so I know for me personally, it took it took something traumatic in my life for me to just be like, screw it, I don't care anymore. Was there a particular turning point in your own life where you just were like, kind of like, screw it, and you began to unfollow, or was it just a gradual thing?
No, there was definitely a big event in my life for me that happened. I don't think there has to be for everybody, right? Like, I do think some people's are gradual. I kind of kickstart off the book with Unfollow medical gaslighting. And so I talk about my experience with my 20-month-old son who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and how at that time, I love to share this story because at that time I was a 29-year-old people pleaser, perfectionist who absolutely did never want to go against the grain of other people, and feared the opinions of other people. So that was me at 29, and I'm 39 now, right? And so at 29, I was pregnant with twins. And 10 days later, my son was diagnosed, and so it just was this crazy time. And I was hearing all these things from the doctors who were, Jana, they're older than me. I think they're smarter than me. I think all these things about them. And if I don't act a certain way, they're not going to like me, right? And
Yeah.
what happened was I started to hear things like, your son, only has a small percent chance of living 5 years, and your son has this, and all these different things. And what happened was I just started by questioning everything they said, right? I started off from this place of like really trying to figure out, was that my only option? Are there other options? Are there other things? And I started to get excited to think, what if my child does survive? And what if I'm able to change the face of pediatric cancer because of it? Right.
Yeah.
And I just started looking at it differently rather than the opinions of this guy who had done the job for 40 years, or this guy who, is the head of the department calling me an idiot if I put my kid on a certain clinical trial. And I just started moving away from that and realizing in that moment, if I don't put on my big girl pants,
Yeah.
my child will likely die. And that was very dramatic, but I don't think it has to be. And I've seen people do this work. I have clients in my mastermind, clients in my retreats who do this work without things like that. And so I share that story with maybe yours wasn't a medical gaslighting situation. Maybe it was something else. But
Yeah.
that thing can still give you that firework that you need in order to start deciding, right? I'm going to start deciding to unfollow, and I'm going to do it from this place of, if I question everything with excitement, I start to imagine this life that maybe I could have. I mean, look at your life, Jana, right? Like from the year that we met, right? Like right? Like, I mean, it's beautiful and amazing, and I just like following you on social media is just so fun, right? Like, but it's fun because I got to see you do that work. but also I think you started to look at life like a little differently.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. And, you know, it's important for all the listeners to know that because Melissa began to question everything, because you begin to unfollow, that saved your son's life. And it's been 10 years and
Yeah,
he's
it's been 10
healthy.
years, and he
Yes.
is a middle schooler, very typical middle school boy, and I love every second of it. But what is also so cool about this chapter of Unfollow is that clinical trial that we were told not to do, and if we did, we were idiots, is now a part of every treatment of every child who has neuroblastoma. And so
Wow.
it's that reminder, lassies, to say, stop quieting your gut down. When you hear
Yeah.
those little maybes, like there's a reason they're happening. And I think when you grow up in the society that most of us have, right, and most of the homes, right, like with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, it is you respect your adults and you do what you're told and
Yeah.
you don't question. Like you literally don't question. And that's the environment that, as a child, it's like you don't speak when you're spoken to, right? And
Yeah.
so then here I am as a 29-year-old adult with one child and two babies inside of me thinking, I'm supposed to question this, but I'm so scared. I'm so
Yeah.
scared because what if they don't like me? And I love sharing that part on here, and I shared it on stage at Fame Powered, and you were there at our amazing friend Samantha Joy, her incredible event in Denver, and I shared like we have to start talking more about the messy middle of our lives, right? We have to start talking more
Absolutely.
about this idea that like it was terrifying for me to stand up to a 70-year-old head of oncology department. Terrifying. Not terrifying today at 39, but
Yeah.
absolutely at 29 it was. And so, if you're listening, I just want like maybe it's not pediatric cancer, maybe it's marriage, maybe it's your body image, maybe you need to unfollow diet culture, maybe you need to unfollow something else like but this book has like a little bit of everything because there are 10 stories inside of the book that are my brave, brilliant, incredible clients who have offered parts of their story knowing that it will help somebody else if they start questioning it like that.
Yeah, and I love that, and it's a great testimony to what you do and who you are, and the message in itself. Um, I think more and more people need to really soak that in because, eh, you know, how I grew up, and I know for you as well, there wasn't social media, and there wasn't um, this constant feeling of having to be perfect and do what everyone else does. And like you said, people just live life on autopilot, and people follow too many people on social media who who I think really are maybe not the best people to follow because these people don't necessarily look. People don't show the gritty parts of their life on social media, right?
Yeah.
Everybody makes it look perfect, and there's all the filters and I get it, but the pressure that it puts on people to live this life of perfection that doesn't exist, it just people don't question anything. It's just they're going after something they could never ever obtain.
And then the
And
message that sends to the next generation that comes through and to our children who
mhm,
are watching everything that we do.
100%. I have 3 kids. My 2 oldest are teenagers, and gosh, I feel old saying that. And I'm just amazed that
You look like a teenager, so you can say it with pride because you look like you're a
well, I
teenager.
appreciate that. I just turned 42.
Woo!
You know,
Let's go 40s.
I
I'm
do,
ready. I'm
I
excited.
was so excited. I know
I'm so
you're
excited.
literally what, 10 days from turning 40?
Right now it is 18 days and I'm like
Yeah.
doing a countdown and I'm like, this is going to be the best decade of my life. Like, I'm just so excited.
I love that, and um I was more excited about turning 40 than any other age, and because my 30s were hell. My 30s, that was Lyme disease, divorce, it was hell. And turning
Mhm.
40 to me, like you said, it was like this turning point of walking into my chapter of destiny, so to speak. But it
Yeah.
took my 20s and my 30s and all of that crap to prep me for what was to come in my 40s, right? And
I tell my
so,
clients all the time, like, we win or we learn, right? Like, we
yeah.
win or we learn. These are the only two things, right? Like, everything that is
Mhm.
happening, everything that happened in your 30s was not a failure, was nothing, right? Like, these are things that
100%.
we either win or we learn from them. And, like,
Yeah.
if we start practicing that thought more, it's just so much easier to move away from perfectionism. And there's a chapter in the book called Unfollow, perfectionism, and follow, start before you're ready, right? And it's just this idea of moving away from having everything be perfect and right. And so I
Yeah.
love that you share about your Lyme disease. I love that you share about your divorce because it's who you are now. Like, look at you.
Oh,
You're incredible.
100%. And I get a lot of um that was the one thing that was the hardest for me to share, Melissa,
Mm,
because not because it was hard for me to talk about, but because um I was so worried and scared about what that person would think if they saw it, right?
mm,
The ex, and I worried for way too long about that. Even though that person is, hopefully doesn't see my social media because he's blocked. It was that fear of like, well, I don't, and I'm like, I don't want to upset who do I not want to upset? Do you know
mm.
what I mean? And I remember the first post that I made about divorce and how it's just ugly.
Yeah,
But the beautiful part of it, and it got so much response, and I was like, wow, it was the one thing I was the most uh, scared of talking about.
yeah.
And I did exactly what you're talking about in the book. I unfollowed all the crap that was holding me back from doing it, and I just
Mm,
did it. And once I did it and I got the response, it made it easier, right? There's a way to talk about things. It doesn't have to be when you're talking about things from a healed mindset versus a victim mindset. So I know you mentioned some of that in your book about the victim mentality, right?
yeah, I do. I talk about unfollowing Martyrdom Mountain. And I joke about it because, like, hello, I lived there for a while, right? Like, and I talk about that in the book. In this, especially you and I, right? We're female entrepreneurs who have children, right? And our kids have big lives. Okay, my kids have baseball and golf, and they live big, beautiful lives, right? We created that for them, right? And
Absolutely.
on purpose and intentionally. But it also means that, like, we have to really get very intentional with how we live our life, how we spend our time, how we don't, the people we spend it with. And I really feel like, the 10 years ago when Cannon was diagnosed, it sort of put in this thing to me of like, one life, what am I going to do with it, and how do I want to live it? And when you're talking about your divorce and it being so hard, like, I wonder if, right, and that's what I want people to get from the book, if you started questioning that from a place of, well, how could this be like exciting, right? How could I tell this story and then, oh my gosh, look at the number of people, Jana, that have now reached out to you for support, that have now said to you, I totally relate to your story, that you're now coaching and helping and bringing this love and energy to. And like, for me, that's the exciting part, right? Like, how can I turn this thing into something that will fuel my fire?
Yes. Yeah. No, I
That's
love that because I love that message, right? Because I think that too many people, they question their life from a place of like, this is what you say, right? They question their life from a place of lack and of fear, and then they stay stuck and miserable. And sometimes you just got to turn that around.
mm,
And people just, it's like every thought that comes into your head, you don't have to believe it. It doesn't have to stay there. You can be like, next, swipe. And when you do that,
unfollow, unfollow,
unfollow, right.
unfollow,
That's
unfollow.
but it's like people don't do that. It's like it's very robotic. Whatever comes
Yeah,
in, it just like, oh, it's meant to be. That's what it is. And it's not. It's okay to question things. And when you question things, that's when everything really starts to change, right? And
yeah,
so I know for me personally in my life, when I began to question everything and in my inner circle and who was in my life. And I began to put boundaries in, right? I know you speak of boundaries as well in your book. So for me, when
Yeah.
I set boundaries, it was kind of like putting the fence up in my backyard to keep the weeds and wild animals out, so to speak. And the weeds and wild animals were the people that weren't serving me well in my life.
Mm.
And it wasn't an easy thing to digest because I thought some of those people were really my friends. So
Well, some people just love us when we're down, right? They love us when we're
exactly.
down. And their
Yeah.
hand is out with, oh my gosh, you're going through a divorce or you're going through this thing. Let me help you. Let me help you. And then you start to
Hmm.
get better and you rise, and all of a sudden they don't feel so good around you. And now they start to judge some of the things that you do. And oh, you're going to move, you're not going to be the CEO of the nonprofit anymore, and you're going to go do keynote speaking and have your podcast. How dare you, right? Like there are people who are like that, right? They operate from this place of, I like you when you're down, but when you start to rise or get higher than me, I'm not so interested in you. And like that's really when you get to find out who are my real friends and who are here for my misery, because there are people who just love the freaking misery.
Yes, because it keeps them safe. And when you step out of your box and you're able to spread your wings, that makes people uncomfortable with their own insecurities.
Yeah.
And I mean, in my personal experience, I think that when I was in the victim mindset, then the other victims around me, they were comfortable. But as soon
Mm.
as I was kind of like, I'm not really sure that's serving me well, I was hit really hard with people, and man, they did really good at trying to make me feel guilty for a little bit. But you know what? I realized that those people were really just holding me back in
Yeah.
life. And another part of your book in a chapter is about alignment. And so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of, with me setting boundaries, I had to really think about what it was that I wanted in my life, right? So, how does alignment play a part in unfollowing?
Yeah. So I one of the chapters I say unfollow work life balance and follow work life alignment. And really like that chapter is a big chapter for the entrepreneurs in the world, right? Like the people who have multiple moving parts in their life. And what I realized from working with lots of entrepreneurs and speaking to hundreds of them, that this idea of balance was sucking up so many of our energies and not for the good, right? It wasn't propelling
Yeah.
us forward. And so I started to be like, well, how do I need to think about this and talk about it with them in a way that's going to feel like they can do the big thing they're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you play bigger in your life, like you're doing right now, it's easy to feel like you're always off balance, right? Like I want this book to be a huge success, but I also have four children who are 12 and under. I have a 5-year-old, right? So I have this big, busy life and a dog and a stepdaughter in a different state with grandbabies and I have a husband who travels, and it's easy to sort of be like, I I don't want to say give up, but it's easy to like put your dreams to the side, put your goals to the side, and just imagine that this other thing is more important. And
Yeah.
I hope that chapter, and I hope that certain chapters in the book really encourage entrepreneurs who have big lives to realize that when you change the goal to be more about how do I align these things in my life, and I talk about the practical side of that too, right? The book also has a lot of practical tools in it that I've created over the years from scratch, right? Because I think a lot of the time we start to understand and conceptualize certain things, but we don't have the tool to like help us
Yeah.
do the thing, right? And so I talk a lot about like setting goals. So for me, one of my big goals was to be able to have my family life be more integrated to my work life. And so, just to give you an example, earlier on today, I was talking with one of the event organizers of that I'm doing a keynote at. And I said, I want to make sure that this is okay with you, but I'd like to bring along my 10-year-old son because he loves to see me speak. And that's like joy for him. It would also mean him and I would go on a plane together by ourselves. We would stay in a hotel together by ourselves. We would have an experience together. And for me, that would allow me to have the joy of my work and supporting, lassies and lads and their dreams from the stage, but also have my child be a part of that experience for me, with me. And so for me, that's ways that I have been able to align some of my work life with the fact that I have 4 children who actually kind of like me, Jana, and they want to hang out with me
How
and they
could
want
they
to be.
not? I mean, I love it when you say Lassie too. That one, I just love that. Absolutely. And what you're saying is so true because I call it mom guilt.
Yeah.
I when I decided a year ago to just finally go after my dreams, I remember
Mm-hmm.
asking my kids, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that I needed their permission. And maybe there was a part of me that wanted it, but I just wanted them to know, like, how I've been here for you. I'm not going to just physically be here all the time. I'm going to be a little busier. And I love the fact that you are incorporating that into your work because, you know, our kids just hear us say that I got to go on a trip, I got to go on go work or do this and that. But when they see it, and he's going to see the impact that you have on people and all these people that love you, all it does, I believe, is it makes them support us even more. And how are moms supposed to tell our kids to follow their dreams,
If
be
we don't,
everything they want to be,
I know.
but we're too scared to go after ours, right?
100%. Plus, here's the thing I think about too with that is I imagine how a child is going to feel when they grow up, and if you turn around and say to them, "Oh, I didn't go do that thing because I was being a mom." Like, no, I'm not putting that on my kid. That's on me. That's my responsibility if I don't go do anything else. I think the other side of this work in the book also is when I am around my children, I am there. When I pick them up, and I do drop off and pick up every day. How do I do that? I do my work around it, right? I will finish this podcast and I will go to drive through, right? And I will be in the car line for 45 minutes like every other mama bear, right? But when I finally get to my children and they are in the car, we will maybe go grab a Starbucks. We'll maybe go to Ace Hardware and get some extra worms for fishing, right? Like I'm in
I love
it
it.
and with them, right? Like, and I'm conversing with them and I'm asking them how was their day out of 10. I'm not talking on the phone. I'm not emailing. I'm not texting. I'm with them. And so one of the things I've unfollowed is autopilot. I've unfollowed that idea that
I
I'm
love
just
that.
going through the motions of life because I don't want that. I want when I'm with them for them to know I'm with them. And when I'm at work and I'm doing a podcast with you, I want you to feel like, oh, Melissa was really there and present with me. Like I felt like
Yes.
she wasn't checking her phone or doing something else. She was really with me and she was present with me. And many people have not figured this part out. And I really hope that it is something that everybody in the book goes to that chapter and reads Unfollow Autopilot because honestly, like, how can you appreciate life if you don't?
100%. And that brings me to the part about being present, right? And there's a difference between just being there. There's a difference between picking your kids up every day on autopilot, as you say, and picking them up and you're present. And
Totally.
you were present during your with your clients. You were present on an interview. You're present on the stage, but then you're present in the car with your kids or at home. And it to me, it's quality over quantity. And
Always.
so, for anyone who's maybe struggling with the mom guilt and the fact of like, oh, I won't be there to do this every day. Well, how are you present right now, right? Because I know for me, when I learned how to create my own happiness and love myself, the way I was present in life was was totally different because I did life differently. I was more present for my kids, and they finally saw the true me. I think too many moms feel like they just have to have this mom persona on all the time, where it's like they're more of a coach with a whistle around their neck, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And they forget how to just be raw and real with their kids.
Yeah.
And so I love that you show your kids all of that, right? And I think that's really, really important, is to be present.
Yeah,
And
I showed them me crying too. I cried in the car the other morning because they were being mean. And,
hey, I
you
know
know,
that one.
it was hormonal. And I was like, it's just not funny. And I was a disaster. So I hope you're not listening to this interview and thinking, wow, she's really got her SHIT together, this chick. Because honestly, more about my mess of my life than I do anything else. And I do it with that hope that, like, each of us lives the human frickin' experience, man. Like, we're
Mhm.
like, I'm not here to play. Like, I want to win at the game of life. And I feel
Oh, I
like
love
some of
that.
that sometimes has to be like, let's take ourselves a little less serious.
100%. And that's literally what drew me to you, was your real, your authentic, your raw. But you have to just be real with people, because that's what draws people in, and everyone wants to kind of feel like they're not alone, right, on their shitty days. And
Yeah,
so there was a time once where I try not to cry in front of my kids or get upset. um
absolutely.
Not get
Yeah,
upset with them, but just with something that was going on with me. And it used to be run to the bathroom and lock the door for 10 minutes, right? And I remember the day, and a lot of that was when I was married, right? Because I wasn't allowed to have any emotion other than happiness, which
yeah.
I wasn't really happy. And so the first time I let that wall down in front of my kids, they were there for me. How are we
Mm,
supposed to teach our kids how to be empaths and deal with other people's emotions if we don't ever show them how to do that, right? And
right.
so I think that's really, really important. Like you're talking about, like, you don't always have your shit together, and who does, right? We
Nope.
just do the best we can, but we only have one life to live.
One life.
And so how do you want to live it, right? And time's going to go by no matter what. Do you want to look back and be glad you did, or wish you would have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. That's why I call my membership One Life. I'm like, we're going to be a group of people, and we're going to be a community who believes and acts in this world like they get one chance here. Like one.
Yeah, because we all do, and none of us know when the expiration is, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so, so what would you say for? I know for me, like in a relationship, I feel like when one person begins to work on themselves,
Hmm.
if the partner isn't on board, I feel like they either grow together or they grow apart. So, what do you tell people who are in a relationship, and they're wanting to do this, but they're scared or worried that their spouse might not be on board? How would they go about that?
So one of the things that I tell my clients all the time is that, and I like to think of it, I ran a marathon a couple years ago, and I think of it like a race, right? Like, in the race is life. And I always say, you don't need your partner to be at mile 20 with you, right? You don't. But you do need them to at least be in the race, right? You need them
Love
to
that.
be at the starting line. And I think that's really important, because I do think that, you know, stereotypically, we females do a lot more of this type of work than males. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that males don't want it, though. In my experience, my husband and I we just went and spent 8 hours with a therapist. 8 hours, Jana.
And
We've
one
been
day,
together for 20 years. Yeah. And we did a whole day, like a day's retreat of like it was with a therapist. And I think, if you don't water things, they don't grow, right? And so I am totally comfortable with not being at the same mile marker in the race, but I need to know you're in the race. And that's what I tell my
mm,
female
love it.
clients, my married clients, my clients who are in long-term relationships. Stop trying to make them at mile 20 with you. You've been A, doing this longer, and B, you might get it quicker, okay? But like, make sure they're in the race with you, right? Like, that's the main thing. And if you start to get pieces like that, then I feel like you're fine to wait for them to catch up,
Yeah. I love
you
that,
know?
because I've never heard it quite put that way with as long as they're in the race. And I think that that is, I think that really is all that it takes is
Yeah.
that they got to be on just on board, right? But if you're in at the same time, when you're with the right partner, you shouldn't have to even worry about that. It should just be the fact that like you can talk to them. And for me, I'm personally just now in my first healthy relationship with any man. I've
Mm,
never had a healthy relationship with a man, not brothers, father,
yeah. Wow.
at all. And it took it took a little bit to understand what a healthy relationship was, and I then had to start questioning everything because I was like, well, this isn't something's wrong. It's like, why do I think something's wrong when everything's right? But that's what I was doing, and
Yeah.
so I very clearly understand now that I I shouldn't have to worry about talking to him about things, right? And I know that he's going to understand. It might not be for him, but he's at least going to understand and support me. And I think that that's really important. And there's something about discomfort that stops people from moving forward, right? You get
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Healing is not comfortable. Healing healing is uncomfortable, but I believe that we grow in the discomfort. When you have a client who who starts to get uncomfortable in a process of unfollowing, right? What what are some things people can do when they're uncomfortable instead of just stopping progress? What should they do in order to keep moving forward?
Again, I think it just comes back to asking the right questions, right? I think we get overly uncomfortable, like
Yeah.
uncomfortable to the point of wanting to stop when we're asking the wrong questions. When we're asking the
Mhm.
right questions, I'm uncomfortable, Jana, but I know I'm okay in this uncomfortableness. Why do I know that? Because I know that it's temporary. Right? I'm
Yeah.
convinced it's temporary because I've already planned out in my life what this work is going to entail. Like both of us, writing a book. That wasn't always comfortable. We're
No.
crying on social media, we're healing things as we write, right? It was really hard. But I again was just asking myself those questions instead of getting
Mhm.
to that point of being so uncomfortable that I quit, that I stopped writing the book, that I couldn't keep going. And I think when we do it like that, we're just so much more inclined to move in the right direction instead
Yeah.
of just staying still.
Yeah. No, 100%. And you know, I remember you had a post that you started writing this book 5 or 10 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah, it was called
Wow.
something else. I actually had a different name for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Well,
did. It was
I'm
called
really
something
curious
else.
as to what that was, but
I will
Unfollow
tell
is
you, it was called Roar. It was called Roar,
okay.
um, which is a great name. But then
It
someone
is.
else wrote a book called Roar, so that was not going to be the title of the book. But it's funny because I actually was offered a publishing deal for it around 3 or 4 years ago, and I ended up showing the contract to one of my other friends who is a writer and has great books, and he was like, you can't sign this is like not a good deal for you. And so I ended up never finishing it and never publishing it until I met Samantha Joy, and she was like, yeah, you need to finish up this book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do. Like, the timing of it was so perfect, and I already had been developing all these tools from years of coaching high performers, that I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so good to write this book and have this place to put amazing client stories and amazing tools that I've created, and have it in one concise, beautiful piece of art. So I'm
I
super
love
proud of
that.
it. It's not called Roar.
I know. I love that. Roar is a great title, but
Great
Unfollow
title.
for me it just says everything. It speaks
Yeah,
volumes
unfollow.
because
Yeah,
you automatically and you think unfollow, you hear unfollow, and you think social media,
yeah.
but it's not just social media. There's so many things that we need to unfollow in life. If there was one thing, if there was one place that you would recommend, if someone's like, where should I start? What do you think is the first place for someone to start to unfollow or to question everything? Is there a certain part of their lives that you think that people should start at?
I think that there is one that the return on investment of the work outweighs some of the other things that are offered in the book, and I think that that is the unfollow autopilot. I think that when you unfollow autopilot, there is a direct domino effect on many different areas in your life, and I think the return on investment for that work in that chapter is massive. And I also think it would spur you on to do other pieces of work because you would get the benefits of it so quickly.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that because like you said, it's kind of a domino effect. When you begin just one little area, it sometimes that's all it takes, right? It's like a just needs like one little push and then it just starts to flow. And and then when that happens, I feel like everything in our life slowly starts to just kind of fall into place. But you can't start the wheel to turn, so to speak, if you don't push it. You got to do
Yeah.
something. Well, I'm so excited about this book. I know it's coming out November 27th.
Yeah.
Um, and I honestly, I can't wait to read it. And I'm so glad that we got this time together. I can't thank you enough just for coming on the show. And I know you probably got to get to go pick up your kids and get in that 45-minute car line.
Gotta
uh,
love a car lane. If you've never
hey,
experienced
that's
one, you
that's
should
like the
try
last
it.
minutes you get to like catch up on your phone calls and do all that stuff. So
And
I
I'm
know
usually
my
podcasting waiting in the lane. That's always fun. I always have some good podcasts going. So
oh my goodness, that's the best time. That's when I get to do like those types of things, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. You're such an inspiration to so
Oh,
many amazing people, and the work that you do is just like such a light in the world. So I really appreciate you like taking time out of your day to interview me about the book.
oh my
It's so kind.
goodness, absolutely. I could listen to you forever, and I mean, this has just been amazing. Truly, I have so much more I could talk about, but I know that I know we're going to have another conversation because you're fixing to be a best-selling author, and so then we'll need to have a conversation about that. So I want my listeners to be able to just find you. So where should people go to find you?
Sure. So you should definitely follow me on social media. Maybe you'll even see me in Carline. That's fun. And I have a lot of fun on social media. I give a lot of like motivational tips, but also like very honest, raw encounters of real life as a working mom too. And then melissawiggins.life is my website, and you can go on there and you can sign up for my newsletter where you'll find out about everything that's sort of coming out with the book and the book launch and the parties and all the fun stuff that we get to do to like make these books bestsellers so that they can help as many people as possible.
Well, I know I absolutely love following you on social media, and so I highly suggest everyone goes and does that and listen to our podcast. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I hope you all have a great day, and I will be talking to you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.